Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning, everyone. Can you believe it's October? Welcome to another Sunday morning at Faith in Our Hometown. We're glad you joined us this morning for another Sunday conversation about things that matter to us as people of faith of the greater Joplin area. My guest this morning is going to be a guest that we've had on before, Ashley Micklethwaite, who is the executive director of One Joplin. But recently, she got a new job, other duties is assigned, as kind of leading the efforts for the census here in our area. And we thought it would be fun to kind of talk about what that entails and what it involves and how things are going as we get ready for a new upcoming census. So we're going to be right back in just a moment. So grab that cup of coffee, settle in, and we'll be back to talk about what goes into doing the census in our area and across the United States as we get ready for another round of that. So again, I'll be right back after this Mercy Minute. So stick around. We'll be right back with Ashley Micklethwaite of One Joplin.
The dreaded tagged photo. I married the love of my life in October, and when I got home that night, I saw this. Frankly, this is every obese person's worst nightmare. You have no control, none, over what other people post. And up until that day, I'd been very careful about how I presented myself on social media. In fact, I generally only posted photos like this. What's sad is that I haven't always been like this. Confession, I've been a yo-yo dieter for roughly 10 years. When I met this amazing guy 3 years ago, he didn't care how much I weighed, but he did care about my health. A month after our wedding, I talked to my doctor and my journey began. Here's an honest and usually pretty entertaining look at how I got to bariatric surgery and beyond. Buckle up, check out my blog, Confessions of a Yo-Yo Dieter.
Well, again, thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning for Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning, Ashley Micklethwaite. Ashley, thanks for coming and joining us again.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, when I heard that you had a new job, not really a new job, and other duties is assigned that got tacked onto your regular job, yes. I thought, well, what the heck? We haven't had you on the show in a while, and this is a brand new area for you. So are you excited? What's going on in census land?
I'm very excited. I was voluntold, maybe.
There you go. Yeah.
To help our community come together and make sure we have a good, complete count for our census in 2020.
And why is that so important? Because I don't know that, sometimes we hear these things in the news or whatever, it's just like undercount, overcount, all that kind of stuff. Why is it so important for accuracy?
Well, for a bunch of different reasons. The three primary reasons are the complete count and how many people are in a particular location determines how many House of Representatives that you have.
Right.
So very important for representation.
Right.
It also determines how congressional lines can be drawn and how big those areas are. And finally, it determines how much money can go to any particular area.
Okay, so like money is in?
Federal funds.
Okay, all right.
So there is $687 billion that will be apportioned per year based on the 2020 census.
Okay.
So making sure that we have everybody counted in our area is vital to make sure that we get our fair share.
Well, and I think that is important that we get our fair share and that every representative area in the United States gets their fair share. I think that that's really important.
Yes.
But sometimes people will question, the census and all those kinds of things. Is there, have we ever had any census fraud that we know of in our area or any of those kinds of things? Because sometimes people worry about that. I don't have a tendency to worry about that because I just think it would be, yes, one person may do something here, but widespread or difficult, I would find that a little hard to believe. Do we have any evidence that anybody's been messing with our census here in the area?
No. In fact, what we do have evidence of is in the last census that was taken, about 25% of our population wasn't counted.
Okay.
Which meant we left about 25% of funds that should have come to us on the table, and they went to other communities.
Or, that they might have redrawn a district or something that would have helped us be represented better, perhaps, in
Yes.
Government or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did they come up with that number? How did they guess, or how did they figure that we missed 25% the last time?
They actually.
That's an interesting question to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
how do we do that?
They actually have developed a map and use statistical analysis based on the 2010 census and how many people they predict are currently here versus how many people responded in the 2010 census. So
Okay.
you can go on the U.S. Census Bureau's website if you're a data geek like I am. I love data. And
Well, you're probably a good person for this job. Okay.
and click on this map and drill down to your community and even your neighborhood to find out all of the statistics about how many people live in your neighborhood and what the percent of response rate was in the 2010 census, which is a predictor of the 2020 census.
Interesting. So they believe that we were underrepresented by up to a quarter.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And for every person not counted, according to the Missouri Foundation for Health and some really, really smart people, it's about $1,200 per year per person not counted.
Okay.
So you multiply that all out for the people in the Joplin area alone, that's $20 million
Wow.
a year.
That we could have had in,
That we could have had.
in extra funds to help people or to help our infrastructure or whatever.
Right, because
Yeah.
these money, they build roads, they build schools, they help with health care, all kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, in terms of some of that, there was a little controversy this last year that the president was going to add another, thing, another question to the census, and and people were saying, oh, that would be, unfair or whatever. Where do you land on that? What would have been, what was the big controversy, and why would that have, was that something we should be worried about?
Well, the big controversy was whether or not to add a citizenship question to the census questionnaire. The concern was that if you added it, some people might not respond. And because it determines how much funding is apportioned to any particular area, if you're undercounted, you still are providing services to people, whether they're citizens or not. They're still using the roads. And so it was a real concern that people would not respond, or people would be fearful, even if they are legal U.S. citizens, because of their heritage not responding.
Well, I stop and even think about how that might have worked out for one of my priest brothers. He just recently, he's been in the country now for several years, but only back in August did he actually become a citizen.
Right.
But he was still here and still working for us. He certainly had his legal status, certainly, but he wasn't a citizen until just recently.
Yeah.
And he's been here working for several years. Actually, he came about 2 or 3 weeks before the tornado and, was hands on the ground, helping, doing everything else. He's from India, and and he was our associate during that whole time, and the associate up in Lamar from the north end of our viewing range. And so it was, he just, that, how would that, now he's, very educated and everything, but I mean, that I guess it could have been intimidating for him to be asked, or was it going to count if he were not a citizen or something?
Right.
And and again, I don't know. I mean, that was it was controversial for a while. Finally got pulled off the table,
Yes.
But really, I don't know many legislators who would not want to have all the people in their district counted, I would think.
Right, and that's the goal of the census, is to count everybody only once,
Right.
and at the right place. And that's more challenging than you would think.
So tell me about that. What about that right place thing? What does that mean? I mean, that we count them all. I understand why we count them only once. I can
Yes.
figure that part out.
Yes.
But why is it important? Why is the place important of where we count them and how we do that?
Again, it's about representation, but it's also important to make sure that It's based on a particular day who's in your home. So let's say you are a loving, giving family, and you've taken in a teenage boy who's quasi-homeless, is couch surfing.
Okay.
If that boy is in your home on, I believe it's April 1st, you need to count him, even though he's not your
You're
son.
part of your family, right?
Right.
But he's living in that location.
He's living in
house.
that location on that date.
Okay.
And that's why that's important. And unfortunately, children are one of the most undercounted populations in our area, as well as in the United States.
So like what happens again? So say, for example, I've got a college student. That college student is at college on April the 1st. Does that college student get counted?
Yes, where they are.
Where they are, but not in your home.
Correct.
Ah, very interesting.
And it gets even more complex when you think about people in the hospital that day.
Right.
People who might be incarcerated. So the U.S. Census has a whole program just to make sure folks in those types of situations are also counted.
So you've got like say for example, our residence halls out at Missouri Southern. There is a mechanism for contacting the university and getting in touch with those students, and they get counted, but they get counted as being a resident of the university rather than, say for example, even our students who live in Neosho, but are up here going to school, but they won't get counted in Neosho, they'll get counted in Joplin.
If they're living in Joplin, they should get counted
On
in
April the
Joplin.
1st.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. So, so these kinds of, you've got mechanisms to handle that kind of stuff, and
Yes.
ways that you can deal with the eccentricities. I don't want to say anomalies, but eccentricities
I like that word.
of the counting process. So you mentioned before we went on the air, we were talking a little bit about this, and you said that people are actually already working now. Now the census isn't going to happen for a while.
Right. Actually, they've been working for quite a while. So everything is going to print. That was a big deal. They've already started printing all of the mail-in census. And then there's people in community right now verifying addresses, because that's how the census gets to most people.
Mm-hmm. You mean so it gets mailed to them? That's the biggest thing, right?
It gets mailed to them, yeah.
So the idea of really most of it happening when people come to your door and say, who's living here and doing all that stuff, that's not really the...
They only do that if you don't fill it out.
Okay.
So if you fill it out and you mail it back in, and this time around, for the first time, you can even pick up the phone and call it in, or you can go online and fill it out online. So there's 3 ways to respond. But if you don't respond, then a census worker might knock on your door.
Okay. And do you try to cover all the doors of the people that you don't get responses from?
Yes.
Okay.
Not me.
Not you.
the U.S. Census Bureau.
But the Census Bureau.
Yes.
Okay. So interesting. Well, these are some interesting questions. We're talking with Ashley Micklethwaite this morning, who is the executive director of One Joplin. But recently, she's gotten. We're going to find out what your official title is after the break. But who is helping us with our 2020 census, and those preparations are being made. So we're here discussing those things. So we're going to take a real quick break, and we're going to be right back to continue our discussions as this census business and how it goes about and how it happens. So stick around. We'll be right back after a quick break.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
All right, so Ashley, right before the break, we were talking about, that the Census Bureau will come and do your thing, but you won't be doing that. So tell me, what is your official job now with this United States Census effort, and how you got this job, and then, how that works out in terms of, so you're not really responsible for it, but you're somehow helping the process along.
Right. So my job is as a committee chairperson.
Okay.
So the U.S. Census is working at the community level to get community partners to come together and work together to help promote the U.S. Census.
Okay, so real quickly, as a community partner, your job at One Joplin, that's a whole organization of community partners.
Right.
Right. So
that's kind of how I got tagged.
okay. They said, we know just the person who can chair this committee.
Right.
Lucky you.
Right. And so really all I'm doing is bringing people to that community table to say, how do we make sure people complete the census, and what kinds of things can we do to educate people and engage them so they will complete it? Because usually it takes people 7 times to hear anything before they do anything about it.
Interesting. Boy, I need to preach longer, everybody. That's all I can say if you got to hear it 7 times and more often the same message. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. So, I mean, I assume you'll be working with churches and you'll be working with all the rest of the different agencies in the community and all that kind of good stuff, just to say, everybody get your people's attention and be one of those 7 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. You know, I really don't know that in all these years that I've done this, I mean, I've heard it before, but I guess in all these years that I've, had to, fill out my thing, and I do fill mine out and send it in when I get it. And it's much easier, I got to tell you, it's much easier. I'm also technically a farmer because I'm in charge of the family trust, and, the family farm is in the trust. Those for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, oh my goodness. Okay, those are a lot tougher than the census forms.
Like how many cows you have?
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, it's all that kind of good stuff. And I mean, it's just like it's asking you to say, what's your agriculture operation like? So census is pretty good, especially when it comes to my household, because I'm the only one that lives there.
Yes.
So that makes life simple. So I can, do my thing, mine relatively easily. I just have to sit down and answer a few questions.
That's it.
But for people who might be scared by the process, so like, what are the questions?
A lot of it is who's in your household, how old are they, and there's a short form and then there's a longer form that asks more questions. But it's really just counting how many people are there, what are their ages. That's the big stuff.
That's pretty much it?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I don't remember it being tough, but I mean, that was 10 years ago and I've slept since then. So.
Me too.
Yeah, so interesting. So explain that. So the process works then that they'll first mail out, and then for those that they don't hear from, then they go and try to do an in-person kind of thing.
Do a follow-up.
So to follow up. So now these are people actually employed by the U.S. government.
Yes.
Okay. So not you. You're not going to be taking your clipboard and going door to door.
No.
Okay.
No.
But these will be people who are hired to actually work for the Census Department.
Yes.
And they'll come to people's doors, and they'll knock or ring the doorbell, and they'll show their ID and say, I work for the Census Department, and I just got a few questions to ask you.
And that's it.
Just in case there are people out there who are fearful. I mean, that they're like, so for example, say they've got a lease and, they're not supposed to have anybody who wasn't on the lease living in the apartment.
This is something that's really important.
Yeah.
Any information you give to the U.S. Census, by law, cannot be shared with any other governmental entity or any other person or entity at all for, I can't remember how many years. It's a long, long time. So if you go on Ancestor.com, you can get information on the census from the 1800s, but you can't get information on the census from 1955.
Okay.
It is very confidential, and the information that's reported is reported as groups of people,
right.
Not
aggregate. Yeah. Where they put the whole collection together.
Right.
So all of the, single guys over 50.
Right.
Me, okay? So that would be in an aggregate category, but they wouldn't tell anybody, hey, the guy that lives at St. Peter's Rectory is over 50 and single.
No.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
And see, and I think that that's important for people because sometimes people get concerned about those things. My brother came to live with me on April the 1st, and do I share that because he really isn't supposed to be living here? But he's got to wait until he can sign or save a new deposit and blah 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 blah, and all that stuff happens all the time.
Right, all the time.
Yeah.
And what the census cares about is just getting everybody counted, and that's what, as a community, we need to care about too.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of fear now or concern about the government, and the census has been around for a long time. It's part of our
When
Constitution.
did we start? Do you remember that? You remember when we started? It was the very beginning of the country, didn't we?
It's in our U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
But the census is even mentioned in the Bible, not the U.S. Census.
Right.
But
our governments have been doing censuses for a long time. Censi, I guess it would be. Censuses is not really a word. Censi, yeah, I guess. But they've been doing it since the time, since before the time of Jesus. I mean, obviously the Roman Empire did it,
right,
and all those kinds of things, and many empires before the
yeah.
Roman. So yeah, it's always everybody always counts.
Yeah.
Everybody always counts, counts heads somewhere along the way to say, well, how many people are we dealing with, and what are we doing, for different reasons.
Yes.
I just think that there's a lot of fearfulness. I know that many people, it always comes up in the conversation, especially in this day and age, that, well, there are people here who might be illegal, and why should they be counted? Why should they be counted? And that's the question that some people will raise. It's just, if they're not legal, they shouldn't be counted. And, and again, this isn't about, I think, illegal or illegal. It's just going to say, how many bodies do we have around here, and what's the deal?
Right.
And again, if we're going to just count, if we're just going to count in the simplest way of doing this, in counting heads, well, then I guess all that stuff really does matter.
Yeah.
What about the arguments that say that they shouldn't count because they're, if they were to be illegal, why wouldn't they count?
I think one of the major concerns has to do with representation, and if you're from a community that might have a lot of illegal workers or immigrants, that you're getting more representation than is due. Mm-hmm. It goes down to fair share.
Well, I'm just going to say this from our area. I don't know that we have any bastions of, quote, liberalism around here, which I always find, I usually wind up being, and I'll just go ahead and say it right here on TV in front of God and everybody, but everybody looks at me, and I'll never forget one time in Cape Girardeau, I just said, I was laughing at the university because I said to one of my parishioners, I wasn't a parishioner, I was a person who one of the parishes in Cape Girardeau, and I started laughing. I said, well, I really don't find the university all that liberal. I'm probably one of the most liberal people up there, and at the university, and this lady looked at me and she goes, and we know, and we've been watching you. And I just went, okay, here we go. I really think that I'm pretty picky and land on. I like to refer to myself as an equal opportunity offender.
There you go.
I think the left is silly about some things. I think the right is silly about some things. I think the Democrats are right on some things. And I think the Republicans are right on some things. I think the liberals, conservatives. I really, it just depends on the argument, and people really find me kind of hard to figure out, like which way I'm going to land, and I kind of like it that way.
Yeah.
Because really, I'm supposed to be preaching the gospel, not doing party politics or any of those things. So that's the way I try to argue those things. But in this one, this is a simple thing that just says how many people are in this area and how does that happen. I don't think that that's going to sway our politics much in this area at all, quite frankly.
No.
I just kind of like shake my head and smile and go, yeah, I don't think so. In terms of those arguments about, well, they shouldn't be counted, I would just rather know who's there. Rather than worry about that argument of does somebody have all the right documentation? Because I think we start getting into that, there's all kinds of other things to count. And while I do believe that all that stuff is important, and I will say that, while I do believe that all of this stuff is important, not for census.
We just need to have a good snapshot of who's in a community on a particular day.
No, yeah, and I would think that we would, we need to count those things for some other reasons, so that we know really what the situation is that we're dealing with and how to fix it and what is it really going to entail. I believe in having the information for all those reasons.
Yes.
But not when I'm just saying, okay, how many people are living in this territory on a given time when we count. So your advice to folks as we get ready to do the census, I know what the first one's going to be.
Complete it.
Complete your census forms, okay? So when they mail them to you, make it life easier for everybody. And everybody, take those forms that are going to come to you in the mail, and they'll arrive around...
In March.
In March, okay? So we still a few months out. Okay, and I'll tell you what, Ashley, if I can be one of the 7 when we get closer to that date, maybe at the end of one of our shows as we're getting closer to March, I'll say, and look for those in your thing. What else do people need to do?
Tell other people to complete it. So when they start getting them in the mail, talk to your friends and neighbors and say,
did you send those in yet?
Did you send in your census?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really important that we continue. I just think it's important for us to participate in the process that is the running of our country, that is our United States.
Yes.
I just think that's important. I think it's important that we know how many people are here and who they are and what makes us who we are. I think that's an important thing.
And for Joplin, this is a really important census because there was the 2010 census and then there was the tornado. And so in the 2020 census, we're hoping that everybody completes it and we can show the country that we have grown back stronger and better than ever.
Well, my guest this morning, Ashley Micklethwaite from One Joplin, talking about the census. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute.
Blessings and greetings of mercy to you. My name is Anna Nichols. I am a Sister of Mercy and currently the leader of Heritage and Spirituality at Mercy International Association. I love the fact that sisters throughout time have gone where they have been called to go, and they have often picked up ministries that they never intended to pick up. 25 years ago, there were 22,000 Sisters of Mercy globally. Today we're down to about 6,200 with Sister Rock and some of the others. But despite the fact there are 6,500 or 6,200 sisters left, there is an amazing number of women and men of mercy who are working alongside us, and that continues to expand and expand, and for me that is incredibly exciting. So as far as National Catholic Sisters Week, I really look at the legacy that they have passed on and the fact that so many women, men, young people are living mercy today. That really is for me what's significant.
Well, again, we're grateful that you've joined us for another Sunday morning at Faith in Our Hometown. As we were talking about with Ashley Micklethwaite, who's helping with our census efforts here in the greater Joplin area, we are just trying to make sure that everyone gets counted and that we know who is here and what we're all about. And that is what we do every 10 years. It is really important, especially for the Joplin area, as Ashley brought up, that between the last census, then the tornado, now it's really important that we know who's here and what that really, that impact had on our community. It's going to be interesting to see, but I think we're back stronger than ever, and I'm just proud to be a part of this community because for so many reasons. But let's just find out who's here. Let's count us all and make sure that each one of us does count. That is one of the things that we do as people who care about each other, is making sure that we know that we count. I want to make sure that I wish Ashley a very happy birthday today, because today is her birthday. But come back and join us again next Sunday for Faith in Our Hometown. I hope you have a great week and a blessed Sunday, and enjoy your life.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.